Hey folks, it's Echo here. Rick and Lathan from the Fun Pimps recently sat down with the Neeb's gaming crew to talk about 7 Days to Die 1.0. During their hour-long chat, they went into a lot of juicy details around the current system that's coming out as 1.0, some of the future things that are coming, some of the history around console, and then release timing. If you want to catch the full interview, I'll leave the link below in the description, but otherwise we're going to get into it. There's been a lot of frustration from the 7 Days to Die community because 1.0 feels like it pushed out a lot of the key features that they wanted, and many feel that it's not finished to the point that it should be called 1.0. Listen to this bit from Rick, and then let me talk to you afterwards.
I wanted to say about 1.0. Some might say this is just another label. It's 22, it's 1.0, but what they don't realize is we've had an additional 8 programmers from Australia working on the base game with us in our actual same database, along with our full team, all pushing towards the same goal. Alpha 22 is the console release, and it has parity. And what do we need to do to improve the base game so that the front-end tutorial is better? What do we need to do to make performance better for everybody, including Xbox X Series, which is our bottom spec now? And so a lot of work has gone into that thought, and the benefactor is all platform.
So let me break this down into several different things that I find really important. The first is that the Fun Pimps have brought in external developers. This means new perspectives. This means a crew that is focused on console optimization that will ultimately benefit both the PC and the console users. And for the console players who are afraid of another Telltale situation, they should be a little bit relieved in that they're working out of the same database and that they're keeping parity between the console and PC versions. In chatting with my community and responding to comments online, one of the big things I've said is that 1.0 is going to force the Fun Pimps' hands. The console community simply won't put up with that. Here's Rick kind of talking to that point.
So if you got a dad's hand-me-down potato, will it run? I don't know what level of hand-me-down potato you're talking about there. Laptop, an old laptop. But if it struggled a little bit, but you could play it before, it's going to play a lot better now. So we do have some optimizations and a lot of polished type stuff.
So I wish we could hear some actual data in terms of the performance increase, but not surprising, we do know that it's going to have to operate on that Xbox Series S platform, and that is ultimately going to drive performance for the PC community. How much? We really won't know until we get our hands on it. Next, I want to talk about the fear that I've heard from the community in terms of the Fun Pimps are going to put this out there and then they're not going to update it, whether they're talking either console or on the PC.
So, for anybody who's afraid that we're going 1.0 and we're changing our development style or we're going to stop developing the game, I think those are just rumors. I wouldn't feel that way. Of course, we want to be more disciplined on our time and our scope and everything else.
So listen, folks, it's in their best interest to keep updating this and keep people on the gravy train. This is especially true if they can figure out how to responsibly deliver DLC without feeling like they're milking the community. And Rick actually talks about this. I'll hit that up later in the video, but he is well aware of some of the bad actors out there and how they've tried to take advantage of the community. Rick was asked what some of the unsung heroes were in terms of features coming out in 1.0.
I don't know if you happen to mention anything that you happen to be most excited about on this.
And the first one that he mentioned was the challenge system. I assume this would be kind of like Xbox achievements, but it was actually a little bit different.
This guy over here has coded a new challenge system, which we're using to improve the front-end tutorial to teach more new players.
So it sounds like the challenge system will largely replace the starter quest. Hopefully it goes a little bit beyond that. Let's hear some details from Rick.
The first 2 sort of levels of challenges are getting yourself clothed and learning how to harvest and meeting the trader, then doing some basics of homesteading so that you won't have to craft that campfire along the way to the trader, which is something you see on the servers. Oh, there's another campfire.
To be perfectly accurate, if you're on a server, typically it's a box that's been upgraded once with a campfire on top of it, but otherwise Rick is spot on this one. Lathan did go on to explain a little bit more detail here.
It's replacing the journal system, so it's a more interactive way of learning how to play the game. And we'll have other challenges that are more kind of achievement hunter type things as well.
So this next bit is really interesting. If you've ever seen Rick and Lathan working together in interviews, it's always funny because Lathan's always playing traffic cop, trying to stop Rick from spilling the beans. So just listen to how this interchange happens.
It also opens the door to do something that had sort of time challenges for double XP towards this DLC hat or something. If you play this, we've discussed
in the later release.
later. Yeah.
So maybe I'm jumping the gun a little bit here, but that sure sounded a lot like the makings of a battle pass. Now, if I'm going to be honest, I actually think that would be a good thing for 7 Days to Die. I, in fact, recommended it to Rick when I was at TwitchCon last year. The other thing that I liked in what Rick said, that he said gathering XP towards a DLC hat. So that implies the ability to gain a DLC item without actually paying for it. Obviously speculation, but curious to hear where his head's going with it. Next, Rick jumped into a little bit more updates in terms of the Dismemberment system and how they've extended it.
The full-on overhauled new Dismemberment with pro particle effects with it is pretty darn cool. And well, you could thank the guy, all the character artists and the particle effects artists, Andres and our character art team, and Steven, who spent significant work making a sort of a universal dismemberment system where there's special jibs for pretty much every zombie.
Now, I don't think this is going to really change how we play the game, but I think we've all kind of enjoyed the dismemberment system. It's pretty hysterical at times when you're seeing body parts flying around. And I'm glad to hear that it's not just 1 or 2 zombies, but now we have it applied to all of them in a kind of universal fashion. Next up, and this is a big one, and we knew this was coming, but the player animations.
With the character system overhaul, the other unsung heroes are the animation team, who put a lot of effort into making all the third-person and improved first-person and third-person animations for the game. So when you're playing with your buddy, it doesn't have janky animations anymore.
So for most folks, I think the new animations will be a welcome change. I know there may be some nostalgia out there for the jank, but you can always go back to older versions if you're on PC. I want to delve into some of the specifics on the console version, both from a historical perspective as well as the path forward. So starting with the history, there is a lot of negative sentiment in the console community in terms of 7 Days to Die just being dropped. I'll let Rick kind of speak to this, but then I've got my own perspective to give on the back end.
I understand why people might be like, wow, the PC guys get it all, but we've got to pay this, but we didn't ask for Telltale to go and solve it and cause this conundrum. We were happy updating it as we were, and we probably would have been updating both all of them in parity all along the way if that hadn't happened. And then we went through a period of about a year and a half where we didn't know if we'd ever get the rights back and the publishing rights. And we were like, well, we got to do what's best for our company and our business, which is to work with the PC version and move forward. And that led to some architectural changes that made it kind of impossible to update the old version.
So I always had a hunch how this went down, but it was good to actually hear it straight from Rick. While they didn't have the rights to be able to publish, they made some architectural changes. Those were the words he used, and I'm not surprised by this. They had to do what was right by the business, and by the business, they've got to keep the employees that they had on the books employed and paid, and I get that. It doesn't excuse the complete lack of communication from the Fun Pimps in terms of regular and, community outreach, but that's kind of part of their DNA. They're not good at community engagement. It is not what they do. Now that said, I do have some empathy because I can't imagine being a game developer who is in the position of having to basically repurchase the publishing rights for the game that you developed. So that's the history, but let's talk about the path forward now. Consoles have grown up a lot and have a lot more horsepower than they used to, but there are still some limitations.
Crossplay may come with some small limitations. We're still navigating, like if you're running a server and it has like maxed out settings or has modded settings that would make it impossible to support crossplay with the consoles. You may have to like run an 8K world and not have this many zombies. So there'll be a range of vanilla settings on servers that will work with consoles.
And we don't have those finalized yet, so.
Understood. Like the consoles can only handle so much,
So when I hear this, I hear kind of 2 aspects of this. The first is kind of map size, and this is just due to memory limitations that you're going to have on a console, and I completely get this. But that is also going to relate to a second issue that I'm curious about, and that is the ability to run modded versions of 7 Days to Die on a console. Now, in general, on the release information that they put out that I'll link up above, Rick wasn't entirely sure to the level that they could support mods as it related to console players. And if I had to speculate, I'm sure this is even a more concern when we're talking about the massive overhaul mods like Darkness Falls, Undead Legacy, Ravenhurst, etc. So for this one, we're just going to have to wait and see. Next up, we get to talk about what happens beyond that 1.0 drop. We've got a roadmap, but we've got almost no details, but now we do have some. So let's first start talking about weather, and this one is pretty good.
Yeah, I'm very excited about the, if I remember seeing you guys' timeline, the weather overhaul
Oh, yeah.
Can you drop any info about that?
Okay, so we wanted a solid way to improve the weather, make it more understandable for players, and improve the overall progression of the game. So you can have elemental protection that allows you to dabble in a biome. That would be more like, I suppose, Valheim or Zelda.
Okay.
But then eventually you get the full protection, and then you can go live there, do jobs there, start a base there if you want, but improve the progression of the game in some ways, along with making weather a better thing.
And easier to understand.
So this might not be popular with a lot of people, but I really like this. I've been a huge advocate for a long time now that they needed to slow the game progression down. Typically, if you know what you're doing, by about day 20 or 30, you're pretty invincible, and the game is just kind of rinse and repeat. It's time to start over, make a new map. This is even more true if you have a good understanding of how loot stage works and you just rush the wasteland for those extra bonuses. But it sounds like now that'll be almost impossible because you'll need those environmental protections just to survive there. This also sounds like a huge opportunity for those who want to do like extreme challenge series to be able to try those harder biomes without the environmental protections. This leads us to one of the most sought after features.
I don't know if you guys can talk about the Bandits. I know that's coming in a later feature, but
a lot of work's been done.
Yeah.
A lot of the models. Steve and Sean have worked on pathing and taking cover and some other variables with it. We've talked a lot about how we want to handle them as far as in POIs, and
But we probably shouldn't share those details just yet.
All right.
Well, yeah, we're still
Lathan, you ruin everything.
Come on.
So unfortunately, we didn't really get any new news here. That's kind of the same talking points that I've heard from Rick over the past few dev streams. This is one of the areas where I have the most concern because they have kicked this can down the road for years now, and it always seems like they're just having technical challenge with implementing this. Now, assuming that they can, I really like this next bit where they tie the bandits back to the biomes that we were just talking about.
It'll likely tie into the biome progression a bit too, a fair bit. So there's a larger presence in certain biomes than others,
I'm excited about that. I'm excited.
Yeah, that could be cool.
Yeah.
Again, this goes back to the concept that I mentioned before. This is going to slow progression because if you've got more bandits, you don't have environmental protections, you really are going to have to kind of step through the different biomes. Maybe that makes you, look at building multiple bases across the map. I just think it kind of opens up a new method of approaching the game. Speaking of a new method of approaching the game, this next one's going to make some people happy that are not too thrilled by the armor changes. At least a little bit, I think.
Once we have more cosmetics, we'll allow you to, whatever you found in the game or whatever you've purchased as a DLC, you can have the agency to make yourself look like that in the game, yet have the armor protection that you want to have.
I have loved this in about every game that's ever implemented this system of basically separating out the function of the armor from the look of the armor. This does several things. First off, you're not going to see a bunch of min-max characters that all look the exact same. You might be wearing all the same underlying pieces of armor, but you'll get to choose your appearance. Now, one of the other complaints that players have had when seeing the armor system is the concern of having to carry around a bunch of different armor sets to do different activities. And this one definitely came up.
What's going to be the most controversial thing in the next one? What's the
exciting?
community going to be set ablaze about?
Yeah, what is it?
We don't think there is anything, but really, I mean, there's some people are saying, well, because you've had set bonuses to the new clothing, you've got to give me a wardrobe feature that's on my person so that I can wear my mining suit. Then I can switch to my stealth suit. Then I can switch to my bartering suit, or whatever. And I think, well, wait. Would you do that? Yeah, and we've talked about a wardrobe just to kind of organize your stuff at some point, and it's on the roadmap.
That sounds like a great idea, or an easy idea is what I should say. It makes things easier, therefore I'm happier.
So this one I kind of see both sides on. I'm with Neebs on the factor of this makes my life easier, I like it. That said, I've seen a lot of comments, even on my videos, saying that, well, this is going to force us to carry around multiple outfits. And no, if you want a min-max, you would have to carry around multiple outfits, but it's not forcing you per se. But here's a little bit more on the implementation of it.
It's a convenience feature.
Yeah. But we're not deaf to that feedback, and we thought about a wardrobe, and how we implement wardrobe is still being debated, but we will put a wardrobe in, and it probably will have kind of a quick change feature of some sort, and you can say, oh, I'm going to go mine for a while.
Yeah.
Boom, I'm in my mining outfit. Now I'm getting mining bonuses, and I can get lucky and get a piece of silver once in a while.
Yeah.
Or whatever perks it might have.
So if that's the way it works, that would actually be pretty damn user-friendly. But I guess we'll have to see how this shakes at the end. We didn't get any more details because, again, Lathan kind of shut down the show here.
That's more of another Joel topic. I don't know. I don't have the document in front of me.
Yeah, you should probably stop sharing details on that.
All right. I'm sorry. Sorry.
Anything at the end, you just let me know and I'll pretend I'll cut it out.
Gotta love the Neeb's crew here. Next up, we had an interesting question in regards to kind of the content that isn't gonna make it into this version of 7 Days to Die. And we got this answer.
Will we do every idea that we've ever had for 7 days in 7 days main game? No, we'll probably move some ideas to a 7 days sequel. Because there's just so many ideas that come in. So yeah, there'll be a separation at some point.
Now, I'm not going to hold my breath, but it is curious to hear Rick start to talk about the idea of a sequel. I think among all the interviews and dev streams, that's the first time I've heard that brought up. Next, they got into kind of the nature of content post 1.0 drop.
Will it be free content? Yeah, we'll probably do free POIs and free balance patches and game modes and things like that. Even after the final update that's on the roadmap is in. We might also offer other paid for content to come in too, without it being, pay to win or doing anything unfair or overpriced along the way. That those bad practices that we've seen others do. We don't want to fall into those traps.
So personally, I found this section really interesting because it didn't sound like Rick had a clear idea of what aspects they wanted to monetize. It does seem like they want to keep a blend of kind of free content that they'll get out there as well as paid content, and the simple recognition that there's some really bad actors out there in terms of game publishers and game studios. EA, I'm looking at you. And I know a swath of the community already says that the Fun Pimps have been cash grabbing, but honestly, folks, we've gotten 12 plus years of updates for free. This is still some of the best bang for your buck that I've ever gotten in my life. So let's go on to the very last topic, the one that everyone's always curious on, and that is release timing.
And this is all supposed to be happening. I mean, I remember seeing you in a video saying June-ish. Is that right?
1.0 June looks pretty realistic yet. We're
What year is
just
that?
kind of
Yeah, wait.
no.
2048.
That's a detail.
Yeah, this June. So, we think we're going to hit an experimental in May. Yet, we think.
So as a quick reality check, it's May 11th now, and they just released the information for signing up for Streamer Weekend. So if I were going to toss my money down, May sounds a little bit premature for experimental. And I think Rick thinks the same thing, because just a few minutes later, he followed up with this.
Sweet.
It's possible, but it could be a early June experimental and a late June stable. That's also possible.
Curious about all the features coming to 7 Days to Die 1.0? Click that link below there and go find out. See you on the next one. Cheers.